Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the fourth part of What If Deku Became a Vigilante. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 10, Interlude, Discovery. Katsuki is many things, but a fucking idiot is not one of them. These past few months, Zuku's been acting weird. Or maybe he's always been this weird and he's just missed it? But anyways, he's been hiding something from him. He's always off doing something whenever he's not with Katsuki, and he knows the nerd doesn't have any other friends and doesn't go to school, online maybe, none of his business. And Eri has been dropping off at his house more and more. So he has a genius plan. After leaving the unicorn with the old hag, who was absolutely delighted at the fact that he would be out of the house, he put on his disguise and started to shadow Zuku. For someone who's so paranoid all the time, like Kami, why does he have 3 knives on him? He is surprisingly dense. Katsuki has been shadowing him for the past half an hour and the nerd hasn't noticed him. Honestly, Katsuki doesn't know whether that means his stealth is just that good or if Zuku is just an idiot. Eventually, they wound up at the trash beach. Katsuki doesn't remember the fucking name of it, it's the fucking trash beach. Apparently, someone's been cleaning it, as it's almost halfway cleared. A skeleton man was standing on the cleared area waiting for the nerd, who beamed like the fucking sun and bounced over. They were talking too quietly for him to hear, so Katsuki crept forward a little bit. "You must make sure you're not overworking yourself, young Midoriya," the skeleton man said, handing Zuku a water bottle. "But you're filling out nicely. You've been keeping on top of that meal plan I gave you, right?" The nerd nodded enthusiastically. "Well, I had to swap a few ingredients out here and there for stuff that was cheaper or in season, but it works just the same. All I really needed to make sure was that whatever I chose had the same nutritional value of what I was replacing. Skeleton man put his hand on Zuku's shoulder before he could go into full rambling mode. "I'm glad, my boy. Your sister is staying with your friend, right? I remember you said something last week about her never having gone on a picnic, so I was thinking we could go after training today." "Of course. I'm sure she'll love it. Now let's get going, my boy." Skeleton man pat Zuku on the back. "Your body won't just spontaneously manifest one for all." The nerd grinned in response. "Right." Katsuki frowned as Zuku topped off the rest of his water bottle, running towards the trash pile nearest to them. Skeleton man hadn't seemed to notice him either, so this was his best bet to get more information. It was pretty funny to see him jump when Katsuki managed to sneak right up to him. "Ah, hello young man." Skeleton man managed to recover fairly quickly, to his credit. "What's going on?" Katsuki just narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Who are you?" "Hey Yagi-san Kiken." Both of them looked over at Zuku, who was lugging a fridge along behind him. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing, dumbass." Katsuki shouted back. "And how did you know it was me?" "You're literally just wearing sunglasses and a fake mustache," Zuku responded. "And you're dodging the question." "So are you." Boys, settle down." Yagi presumably held his hands up, and the two managed to break off their bickering, an accomplishment for both of them. "Young Midoriya, do you know him?" "Yeah, that's my friend Kiken," Zuku said nonchalantly. "I really hope you don't introduce me as Kiken to everyone." Zuku just smacked Katsuki for his grumbling. "Speaking of which, you're supposed to be watching Eri." Katsuki rolled his eyes. "Relax, shitty nerd. The unicorn's with the old hag. The hag was excited to kick me out of the house. Something about a girl's night. Anyways, you're still dodging the question. I asked you first. I followed you out here to ask you." Yagi cleared his throat, shifting nervously. "How much of our conversation did you hear?" "Enough, you two are fucking loud. Also, what the fuck is one for all?" The two of them looked at each other nervously. Katsuki narrowed his eyes, glaring at Zuku, knowing he'll fold eventually. Zuku swallowed but held out, so Katsuki folded his arms and fashioned his normal banter with Zuku's scowl into his disappointed "you are such a fucking idiot" scowl. That made him cave. "Fine. One for all is a quirk." Yagi looked shocked, and Zuku had tears in his eyes. "Fucking crybaby. I'm sorry. I can't lie to Kiken." Katsuki snorted. He knows that he and Eri are the only two people on Earth who could get through to Zuko, and no matter how apparently familiar Yagi is with Zuko, he is not on the list and will likely never be. Look, Zuko's given me the spiel about dangerous information and shit, so I get that, but you better fucking tell me what you can. I don't give a damn about any shitty ass villains, I'm strong enough to blast them all away. Besides, Zuko's an idiot who needs to be reminded to eat, he needs someone keeping an eye on him. Yagi looked back over at the nerd, who was desperately trying not to cry as if he didn't have Midoriya genes, and sighed. I suppose it would be beneficial to have someone else in the loop, he said, then started to tell a tale of a quirk that could be passed down. Of a line of heroes who held and cultivated the sacred power to keep it growing. Of how he, All Might, and no, Katsuki didn't have to take a moment to freak the fuck out, shut up Zuko, is the 8th bearer of One for All, and how the shitty nerd is going to be the 9th. Of course you'd try and get a quirk that'll blow off all your limbs, Katsuki muttered, which earned him a punch in the arm from said nerd. It won't blow off all my limbs if I get stronger. Zuko shouted, pumping one fist into the air. Which is why I'm cleaning the beach. Fine, I'll help you with your lame-ass training, Katsuki grumbled, ignoring the cheer from Zuko and the raised eyebrow from Small Might. But you better fucking get into UA. I'm not going to go through all this work for you to fail. PFF, I'll go beyond passing. Plus Ultra. The shitty nerd pumped his fist in the air again. Katsuki strolled to the trash pile, ignoring Small Might's comment about maybe you should stand back and let young Midoriya train dash and planting his ass on the fridge that Zuko was in the middle of dragging. Well, you gonna clean or are you gonna stand there like a fucking fish, huh? Katsuki shouted from his throne. Man, the fridge isn't gonna drag itself to the damn dumpster. Kickin'. Get off, it's not funny. The nerd was slowly turning red as Small Might started laughing next to him. He stomped over, grabbing the ropes around the fridge and starting to drag, but noticeably slower this time. Man. You're not going to get halfway across the beach at this rate. Katsuki started heckling Zuko. Small Might could later try and justify it as part of the training, but really it was because fucking with the nerd was hilarious. And above all else, a new power that will potentially endanger his friend, All Might being their new personal trainer, and the nerd aiming for UA, Katsuki was never going to give up a chance to fuck with Zuko. Chapter 11, Settling In. Actually Kitsune at Theria Kitsune. At Ophical Endeavor I'm gonna harvest your toes. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. Never mind, the identity fraud can stick around, your threats are fantastic. Please stop at Detective Elia Detector. Why are you like this? God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. I'm just saying that I will boil your teeth is quality gold and I'm gonna add that to my vocab. Actually Kitsune at Daria Kitsune. Feel free to use any of my unsettling threats as long as you aim some of them at Endeavor. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. Fuck yeah hashtag in Dahor. Now trending, hashtag in Dahor. Friendos 3, 9:24 p.m. God's mistake, Kitsune, Eraserdad, Eraserhead, and Tsuki-kun, Detective Tsukachi, are all online. God's mistake, oh I'm a fucking idiot. God's mistake at McChicken are you alright man? McChicken, Hawks, is online. McChicken, it's okay or good. God's mistake, I'm worried about you dumbass. McChicken, rude. McChicken, but seriously I'm fine. McChicken, I managed to BS my way out of it. God's mistake, good. Tsuki-kun, hey Kitsune. God's mistake, uh-oh. Tsuki-kun, what in kami are you doing on Twitter? God's mistake, the Lord's work. God's mistake, also bless the identity thief for only using that account to shit on Indahor. Eraserdad, are you just gonna call him that? God's mistake, yes. Eraserdad. Eraserdad, Mike approves. McChicken? God's mistake, he's reading over Eraserdad's shoulder. McChicken, what the fuck? God's mistake, also on a completely unrelated note. God's mistake, how do you make pancakes? Tsuki-kun, what? Eraserdad, what? McChicken, what? God's mistake, the Lil Sunshine wants pancakes for dinner and I don't want to set my apartment on fire. McChicken, but you love arson. God's mistake, while arson is my husband. God's mistake, I need somewhere to live that isn't on fire. Eraserdad, Easy pancakes recipe. God's mistake, thanks Dad. God's mistake, wait. Kitsune jumped over rooftops, cackling as he heard the police sirens behind him. While chasing a drug dealer, whose cash was now his, he had crossed over into a better part of Musudafu, who were bothering to send police after him. Adrenaline thrummed through his veins, giving him a high that made him feel like he was flying. An idea popped into his head, one that really was a bad idea, but it sent his heart pumping. To get back to the district he was actually supposed to be patrolling, he'd have to cut through the populated city center. A certain pre-quirk hero bubbled at the back of his mind, and he grinned underneath the mask. He changed directions, running towards the cluster of skyscrapers. He could hear the police swearing behind him, but it only encouraged him to go faster. A part of him, his common sense, the part that sounded suspiciously like kickin', told him that this was an awful idea, but the adrenaline high was overriding his brain. He snapped his wrist forward, the grappling hook on the underside of his bracer launching forward. It anchored itself into the side of a skyscraper, and he jumped. The wind rushed past him as he flew, adrenaline thrumming in his veins as he hollered in delight. His hood was pushed back, revealing dark green curls pulled back into a low ponytail, but he didn't really care. The heroes already knew his hair was green. Spider-Man really was the best PQ hero. Kitsune repeated the motion with his other arm, drunk on the feeling of freedom as he swung through the city. He could hear the crowd of people underneath him gasping in delight or shock, and knew that this stunt of his was gonna go viral, but he didn't care. He felt alive. Unfortunately, being in a better part of the city meant that there were actual nighttime heroes. Well, nighttime heroes that patrolled there because they could rather than because they were chasing him. His quirk felt the transformation type quirk behind him. Sneaking a glance behind him, Kitsune saw the hero edge shot at the edge, haha, of his vision. Sure Yoni, the wonderful AI that she is, helpfully popped up information on the pro hero. He dodged a razor-thin body part, he's not questioning which for his own sanity, and the game was on. You know, it's quite flattering to have the big shots after me. Kitsune quipped, swinging around a building as the pro chased him. But really, if you want an autograph, you can just ask. Chasing me around the city is a bit creepy. You know exactly why I'm bringing you in, Edgeshot responded coolly, continuing to follow him. If you come quietly, it'll be easier for you. The vigilante laughed, something mischievous and bitter and jaded, all at once. Yeah, like I'd believe that. The hero flinched mid-jump like he'd been slapped in the face, and Kitsune took the opportunity to tuck and roll into a dark alley. He activated Shadow Cloak, letting the dark shadows settle over his body as he slowly and silently crept to the other end of the alley. A few moments later, Edgeshot ran to the alley, confusion visible on his face as he observed a seemingly empty alley. He continued running though, and Kitsune let out the breath he was holding, releasing his hold on Shadow Cloak and pulling up Crow. The world grew around him, and he could feel feathers run up his skin as his arms morphed into wings. Kitsune, now a crow, flew up into the night, returning to the district he was supposed to be in. Flying as a crow was always peaceful to Kitsune. It was the feeling of weightlessness, the feeling of freedom as he let animal instincts take over and guide him back to where he belonged. Dropping down in the slums of Musudafu, he released Crow, landing onto the roof of the building in a power pose that would make Spider-Man himself proud. He took off across the rooftops, making his way to the sounds of a scuffle that he could barely pick up. He crouched over the edge of the ledge, keeping his mask lights off as he peeked over. Two men, one with a mutant quirk and another with a weak sand-based emitter quirk, were standing in front of another young man, who was hunched in on himself. One had a gun, while the other seemed to rely mostly on their tail mutation. Kitsune smirked under the mask, dropping down from the roof and landing with a thud. Three heads whipped around as he brought up his hand to turn his mask lights back on, and soft greenish-blue light filled the alleyway from the grinning Kitsune face. And what seems to be the problem here? He asked, twirling his compacted staff in one hand, ready to pop it open at a moment's notice. Kitsune. Shit. Both muggers shouted at the same time, the gun now pointing at him instead. None of your fucking business. The one with the gun shouted back. Well, I'm pretty sure you were just mugging that dude, the vigilante responded with a shrug, eyes sweeping over the situation. Unless you want to correct me on that. He took a step forward, and the one with the gun tightened his finger on the trigger. Any step closer and I shoot. Oh, really? Kitsune tilted his head, flicking his wrist. The grappling hook snapped out, snatching the gun from the mugger and pulling it towards him. You know, it's kind of boring to fall back on a gun. I mean, you have a sand quirk, you'd think that you'd be more creative with it. The man flinched, and the other mugger with the tail mutation started to run. The vigilante simply snapped his other wrist forward, wrapping the grappling hook around him and dragging him backwards, alongside his mother's quirk. Sand mugger stepped backwards, creating a small cloud of sand from his fingertips and flinging it towards him. Kitsune simply lifted his wrist, letting a small burst of green fire out to disperse the cloud. I could tango all night, guys, but I do have the rest of the city to patrol. So you could surrender, or I'll drag you to the ground like your buddy over here. Tailman groaned on K. Sand mugger raised his arms. The vigilante tied up the two criminals to a light post at the end of the alleyway. He went back to approach the mugging victim, who was currently huddling in on himself. Hey, are you hurt anywhere? He asked gently, helping the man stand. He shook his head in response, leaning on the wall of the alley. Thank you so much, he said. I thought they were gonna kill me. It's alright, the zip ties are reinforced, they aren't going anywhere, Kitsune reassured the man when he noticed him looking nervously at the thugs. Shirionai's already called the police, so they'll be here soon. Will you be okay waiting here? The man nodded, so Kitsune let his awareness spread, not that he was really unaware, but he focused on it. He felt the presence of Erasure behind him, and turned to see Eraserhead standing at the end of the alleyway. Hi Eraser Dad. The vigilante chirped, reveling in the faces of both the criminals and the hero in question. School just started for you, right? How many students have you expelled? The hero in question rolled his eyes. You don't need to know that, problem child. Ah, but you know I won't stop bugging you unless you tell me. Eraserhead grumbled. Just one. Only one. That's a new record for you. Kitsune the hero was cut off when he skipped backwards, giving a small salute as the grappling hook pulled him onto the roof. Thanks for taking care of the cleanup, Eraser Dad. Kitsune said, perched on the ledge of the roof. I've gotta get back to patrol. Enjoy the paperwork. The vigilante skipped off into the night, cackling as he heard Eraserhead swearing him out behind him. Musudafu Central Broadcasting at official. Kitsune has been spotted traveling through downtown Musudafu, swinging from building to building in a chase with edge shot. Watch the news clip here. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. Look Dad, I'm famous at Katsaraliv. Don't talk to me before my coffee at Katsaraliv. Problem child, what the fuck? The second day of school was better than the first, at least for Izuku's anxiety. He put in the same amount of knives as he did yesterday, and he made sure he had everything he needed. He was pretty sure that his backpack was heavy enough to count as a weapon of its own. They met Kiken and Yurika at the station, same as yesterday, although they didn't nearly miss the train this time. Eri was excited to see Kurana-sensei again, and waved hello to Yagi when they passed through the halls. He and Shinsu figured out that they both used sign language, so used sign language to communicate through classes. It was standard icebreaker stuff, so Izuku was gonna zone out most of the time anyways. They mostly talked about how cool Eraserhead is, and Izuku nerded out about quirks. It was nice, certainly much better than what he remembered school to be like when he was 6. He even managed to convince the boy to sit with him for lunch. Yurika and Itza had already claimed a table, and waved them over. They were next to the table with Kiken and his friends, so Midoriya sat next to Kiken while Shinsu sat next to him. Okami, Izuku's eyes widened after taking a bite of his katsudon. Forget everything I ever said. Lunch Rush is my new favorite hero. Kiken rolled his eyes next to him. Anyone who makes you food is your favorite hero. Izuku simply poked his friend as Yurika and Itza laughed. Kiken poked back, and then the poking war was on. Izunaya-kan. Izuku looked up, narrowly dodging being poked in the eye, as he watched his little sister run through the cafeteria with a tray of food, Kurana-sensei following her. He stood up, going to meet Eri and picking up her tray of food. She was bouncing up and down next to him, one hand clutching the edge of his blazer. Your sister wanted to eat with you in the cafeteria, the hero explained, with a bit of a questioning tone. Of course my favorite little sunshine can come sit with me, Izuku grinned down at Eri, who beamed in return. Come on, Yurika and Itza and Kiken have already sat down, as well as a new friend too. Kurana-sensei left as Izuku picked his way back to their table, Eri following dutifully behind him. He regained his seat, scooting his tray over as his sister sat on his lap and ate her udon, much to the cooing of Yurika and Ashido from the other table. "Shinsu, this is Eri, my little sister," Izuku explained. "Eri, this is Shinsu Hitachi." "Hello Shin-chan." Eri smiled, then turned to Izuku. "Where is Hashin?" Itza and Shinsu seemed to be confused, while Yurika was still cooing over Eri. "I'm sure Hatsum will be here soon, she's probably getting her lunch." "Shin-chan?" Shinsu asked curiously, as if testing the nickname. Eri nodded, then pointed at the teens around her. "Yurikan, Yurika, Ida-kan, Itza, Shin-chan, Shinsu, Izunaya-kan, Izuku, and Kikan. I really like Yurikan." Yurika exclaimed, and Itza looked like he was about to say something, but she covered his mouth with her hand, to his dismay. "And Ida-kan is really cute too." Shinsu nodded in agreement. Eri beamed. Izuku looked at Eri's bowl and sighed. "Eri, you've got to eat your veggies." The little girl pouted. "But they're gross and they taste gross. If you eat them, you'll grow up big and strong." "Then why are you so short, Izunaya-kan?" Izuku sputtered at that, and the rest of the table laughed, including Kikan, the traitor. "Well, Itza is tall, and I'm sure he ate his vegetables growing up." "That I did." Itza started hand chopping. "Eating vegetables is very important to make sure you're healthy and happy." Eri nodded sagely, pointing her chopsticks at Izuku. "Then you need to eat more vegetables." He just leveled a look at her. "Eri, I'm not going to eat your vegetables for you." "What vegetables? What are we talking about?" Hatsum popped up suddenly with her food tray, goggles over her eyes. Izuku took the opportunity to steal one of Eri's noodles. "Big brother tax," he slurped. "Now you have to eat your vegetables." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a pair of chopsticks pluck a piece of his katsudon, and he watched, betrayed, as Kikan ate it. "I trusted you. I thought we were friends." "My only loyalty is to the unicorn," Kikan responded. Eri nodded sagely. "Your loyalty is appreciated, my loyal servant." As the rest of the table laughed, and Izuku reached over to steal some of Kikan's curry, he thought that life couldn't get any better than it did then. Izuku shook himself out, trying to dust the soot off of his blazer as much as possible, definitely a story for another day. The period after lunch for Class 1C was a free period, which was when Nezu was claiming him for their private lessons. Right when he held up his fist to knock, the doors swung open. Nezu was seated behind an enormous desk, pouring tea into a couple of teacups. "Welcome, Midoriya Izuku," Nezu greeted him as the boy walked forwards to take a seat. "Am I a mouse? A bear? A dog? I am Nezu, the principal of U.A. Actually, of everything you could be, you look like an albino stoat," Izuku muttered on instinct, then slammed his mouth shut. The creature across from him only grinned and pushed a steaming teacup towards him. "Excellent deduction, Midoriya. I believe this year is going to be very interesting." Nezu took a sip of his tea. "As my private student, we'll be going over anything you would like to learn. I was thinking of starting with a base curriculum of psychology, logical fallacies, as well as programming and polishing up your analysis and hacking skills. In addition, I was also thinking of including criminal justice, how to track where a criminal will strike and take preventative measures rather than reactive measures. And of course, information gathering and ciphers. Is there anything else you would like to add?" Izuku nodded, taking a sip of his tea. It was a pleasant blend, imperial gold, he recognized it as Gentle's favorite. "I want to know how to manipulate the media and public perception as well. Knowing how to eliminate the influence of a villain and how to better society from the shadows. If I get into a hero course, I'll likely be an underground hero, so this way I can still have the know-how to change the public like a limelight hero without actually being in the limelight." Nezu grinned, and it felt like Izuku passed some sort of invisible test. "Excellent. Now, can you pass over the laptop you used to hack into our systems?" He silently handed the laptop over, observing as the stoat watched the screen with interest. "The cybersecurity on this is excellent, however, I will be adding a few programs that will increase the encryption and some that we'll be using for our lessons." Nezu handed the laptop back. "I don't think I need to say this, but please bring your laptop every day." We will be using them for lessons. Of course, Izuku nodded, putting it safely back in his bag. Now, I do need a baseline of your analyses. Nezu clapped his paws together. So for your first bit of homework, I would like you to submit a notebook of analyses on the students of Class 1A. You cannot ask them about their quirks or prior training, and you must do so in secret. You'll be allowed to go to ground beta where Class 1A is currently training. Izuku took the notebook that Nezu gave him. Would you like me to encrypt the information I write down? Nezu shook his head. This is just a test of your analyses. I wouldn't want any errors in the encryption process to muddy your work, after all. Encryption and ciphers can come later. Izuku nodded in response. Now, our time is almost up, Nezu said, clapping his hands together. You're gonna want to go now if you want to make it to ground beta before Class 1A. Izuku gave his teacher a mock salute, before backing up and activating One for All. At Nezu's questioning expression, he jumped, hooking his fingers on the edge of the open vent and climbing in. Izuku grinned at his teacher's delighted laughter, and let himself cackle as he zoomed through the vents, green lightning crackling around him. Class 1A won't know what hit them. Chapter 12, Pre-Test. Izuku bounced through the vents, letting out shrieks of joy as he ping-ponged through UA. Every startled shout from the hallways above and below him only fueled his mad dash, making his cackling sound insane. Which is just the way he liked it. It only took a few minutes for him to slide into position. He found the observation room rather quickly, laying down flat on his stomach and pulling out his notebook. Izuku was vibrating in anticipation when Class 1A and All Might finally entered the room. His pencil was furiously scratching away as he wrote down observations on everyone's costumes, his mind already 5 steps ahead. Welcome, heroes. Today, we will be conducting your first combat exercise. All Might's voice boomed. The students started talking all at once. Slow down, I have super strength, not super hearing. All Might laughed. Let's see, young Ajui, this will be more of a pre-test than an exercise, to test where you all are at and what we need to work on, and will be perfectly safe. Young Aitsa, you are kind of correct, we will be fighting in ground beta. And young Aoyama, your cape is fabulous. He waved to the board behind him, a graphic coming up behind him. Today you will be fighting within this building. The exercise is simple, you will be divided into teams of 2, one side being the hero and one side being the villain. The villains will be hiding a papier-mâché bomb within the building. For the heroes to win, they can either capture both villains or touch the bomb. For the villains to win, they can either wait out the timer or capture both heroes. The villains will have 5 minutes to hide the bomb and the heroes will have those 5 minutes to plan their entrance. Your teams and battles will be determined by random lots. Are there any questions? Aitsa raised his hand. All Might Sensei. Is determining the matches by random lots the best way to sort us? Yaoyorozu surprised almost everyone by responding instead. Out on the field, pros have to team up randomly all the time. You are correct, young Yaoyorozu. All Might boomed. In addition, it is only the second day of class, and this is a pre-test. Me putting you in teams would be the equivalent to drawing random lots anyways. Although, here the man faltered a little bit, it seems one of you will have to be in 2 teams. Are there any volunteers? Everyone looked around and started to talk, but Kaken pushed his way to the front. I'll do it! He shouted, with a characteristic smirk that was so Kaken that it made Izuku snort. Yaoyorozu, who was closest to the vent he was in, looked up at the ceiling suspiciously. All right, young Bakugu. Now, everyone come forward and pick a slip. The hero stepped to the side, waving his hand at the screen as the teams came up, the names coming up slowly. Team A, Aoyama Yuiga and Mineta Minoru. Team B, Ajui Tsuyu and Todoroki Shouto. Team C, Aitsa Tinya and Tokoyami Fumikage. Team D, Ashido Mina and Katsuki Bakugu. Team E, Yurarika Okako and Kaminari Denki. Team F, Ajiro Mashirao and Hagakure Toru. Team G, Satoru Kido and Katsuki Bakugu. Team H, Kiris Hima Ajiro and Yaoyorozu Momo. Team I, Kauda Koji and Jiro Kyoka. Team J, Shoji Mezu and Suro Hanta. Take your time and find your teams, before I show the matchups. Team G vs Team J. Team H vs Team I. Team A vs Team C. Team B vs Team F. Team D vs Team E. Izuku wondered idly if Kiken's matches were separated so far because of random chance or a certain stoat intervening. He perked back up when All Might sent the 4 students out, hastily scribbling down his predictions for the match and watching the screens with a narrow focus. Shoji and Siro placed their bomb on the 3rd floor, and Siro started wrapping the entire area in tape traps while Shoji just kept an ear or 3 out. Kiken and Sato were crouched down the street, with their eyes narrowed in on the windows. Everyone on both the hero and villain teams had comms that allowed their teammates to communicate with each other, which were also all funneled into the control room. While Shoji was busy directing Siro over where to best place his tape traps, Sato and Kiken were strategizing. Tape Arms is using his quirk to make traps, Kiken said. When the other boy raised an eyebrow, he scowled. You've got eyes, take a look. It's just tape though, Sato pointed out. I can brute force it? Depends on your quirk, Kiken grumbled. When Sato frowned, the explosive rolled his eyes but gestured towards him. I can increase my strength 5-fold when I eat sugar, he explained. I can get 3 minutes out of every 10 grams of sugar. Kiken huffed, before tossing a packet of. Those better not be my fucking gummy worms, Izuku grumbled. A packet of gummy worms. That should last long enough, Kiken scowled. You go in from the bottom and I'll go in from the top, we'll work our way through and meet in the middle. Got it? Sato looked like he was about to say something, but the bell for the exercise went off, and Kiken was already off. He used his explosions to leap into the air, landing on the roof of the building. Sato rolled his eyes, but downed the entire pack of gummy worms and bulked up. Izuku's eyes went wide at the possibilities as the boy entered the building. Shoji and Siro were in the room with the bomb, with Shoji keeping lookout and Siro listening. Izuku could hear the explosions going off on the 5th floor as Kiken blasted his way through the tape. Sato is entering through the 1st floor, and Bakugo is entering from the 5th floor, Shoji said. My tape won't last long against explosions, Siro frowned. You should go confront Bakugo, Shoji said. The extra traps on the 1st and 2nd floor should hold Sato. You're right. Siro grinned, skipping backwards with a thumbs up. Hold down the fort, I'll be back in a jiffy. One of Shoji's tentacle mouths nodded in response, and the boy turned back around. Siro dodged and weaved through his spider's nest of tape, until he came to the 4th floor, the same floor where Kiken was using his explosions to blast away the tape. Yo! Bakoi! Siro shouted. Catch! What the fuck did you call me, Tape Arms? Kiken shouted back, blasting away the tape that was shot at him. Izuku snickered from the vents. He was definitely using that. I don't know, Bakoi, you're kind of fighting awfully hard, Siro kept heckling him, slinging around the blonde with his tape and trying to wrap him up. You can just admit you like the name. Shut the fuck up, soy sauce face. Kiken evidently got tired of blowing up the tape that was sent his way and launched himself at the other boy. Siro made a face as he dodged, but quickly shouted as he fell back into his own trap. The tape he created wrapped around him, and the more he struggled, the more it ensnared him. Kiken's smirk as he wrapped the official capture tape around his wrists was unbearably smug. Siro Hanta from the villain team has been captured. Sorry, Bakugo. They put a lot of tape down here. Sato's voice crackled over the comms. Don't worry, I got this, Kiken declared, putting his hands towards the ground and blasting a hole into the floor. He landed in the room with the bomb, avoiding the tape traps as he landed on the slab of concrete that fell in the first place. Shoji barely had any time to react as Kiken twisted around. The hero team has reached the bomb. The hero team wins. Izuku was vibrating, energy humming in his veins as he watched the fight. He was pretty sure that the familiar green lightning of One for All was buzzing over his skin, he was that excited, his pencil flying fast against the pages. The whole situation should have tipped him off to the fact that it was too good to be true. The 4 students had just gotten back to the observation room when the vent cover buckled. Izuku had just enough time to think oh fuck before he was falling, landing flat on his face. He had just lifted his head up, when his notebook fell down and hit the back of his head. Izuku. Midoriya. Izuku grinned, picking himself up and bouncing on his toes. Young Midoriya. I didn't know you would be here today. All Might said. It's part of my first assignment from Netsu, Izuku explained simply. All Might simply went and moved along. It seemed like the other students wanted to ask questions, but decided against it as their teacher bowled along. Well, That was a very interesting match. All Might boomed. Now, who wants to explain who is the MVP of this round? Yayorozu raised her hand. I think Midoriya should, she said. He's very thoughtful about the match. I heard him in the vents. Izuku flushed, covering his mouth with his hands. Sorry. He squeaked. All Might smacked him heartily on the back, which was probably meant to be light-hearted but sent him stumbling. Well then, let's hear it. He cleared his throat and straightened up. The MVP of the round is Shoji, Izuku said, his voice clear and confident once he was in his element, ignoring the betrayed glare from Kiken. He planned with his teammate and kept a level head the entire match, using his quirk to direct the best places for traps, optimizing both of their abilities to their advantage. What the fuck, Zuku? Kiken shouted from the back. I won. But your communication skills are shit and your temper is as explosive as your quirk. Izuku would never pass up an opportunity to roast his best friend. He also threw his pencil at the blonde. Ow. What was that for? That's for my gummy worms. All Might cleared his throat. Alright, settle down. Izuku blushed and hid his face behind his notebook. Thank you for the insight, young Midoriya. Now, it's time for the next match. There was no way that Team I could have pulled a win out. Kirishima and Yayorozu's quirks were too versatile, and they've both clearly been training with their quirks a long time. I recognize a few of the martial arts styles that Kirishima blended to get his fighting style, and Yayorozu is knowledgeable about her chemistry. To their credit, they did try. Jiro tracked their progress through the building and Kauta used the rats to fight the heroes. But alas, the rats were no match for a hardened Kirishima, and the redhead distracted the two heroes for Yayorozu to use spring boots to jump over and touch the bomb. Overall an excellent strategy, although Kirishima needs to get more of an eye for strategy. He can't rely on other heroes for strategy all the time. Was it bad that I was rooting for Aoyama to smack Mineta the whole time? Mineta kept making pervy comments about the girls. He's going to get expelled at some point, especially with Eraserhead as their homeroom teacher. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. However, when Aoyama threw Mineta out the second story window, I knew it was over. Aitsa and Tokoyami are both powerhouses on their own, together they were a terrifying duo. Theoretically, it could have been an interesting matchup if Mineta could put aside his creepiness and used his sticky balls, that felt gross to write out, to trap Aitsa while Aoyama used his naval laser to cow Dark Shadow and get to the bomb, but that did not happen. Aitsa's strategy was sound, as Tokoyami guarded the bomb in a room in the center of the building that had no windows and only the door as light, so that Dark Shadow was at its strongest, while Aitsa patrolled the area. It ended up working, as he quickly captured Aoyama and ran out to capture Mineta. A solid win for the villains, who I was personally rooting for. Oh boy, Todoroki engulfing the entire building in ice was the hottest thing I've seen in my life. Note to self, don't leave this in when you turn in the analyses for Netsu. Azui just stood off to the side while Todoroki stood to the side and did all the work. Todoroki's power is certainly impressive, but his communication skills are 6 feet under, and he would be even more impressive if he used the fire. I know for a fact he has just used it, goddammit. Anyways, getting back on track. I will have to go and get the footage from the entrance exam to make an accurate analysis of Azui, Ajiro, and Hagakure. It's a shame, those three were the ones I was interested in the most. Izuku was pretty sure he was going to be sore as hell tonight, but he didn't care. He has been buzzing with excitement the whole hour, and was thrilled to see Kiken's next match. Good luck, Kiken. Izuku chirped. The explosive Pomeranian scoffed. Don't confer your shitty luck onto me, nerd. He was pretty sure his brain had to physically reboot. What does that even mean? He just got a middle finger for his troubles. Izuku would soon learn what that meant. Uraraka and Kaminari went in first, with Uraraka going right up to the top of the building and floating the bomb right above them. They talked under the bomb, and Kiken and Ashido talked from a block away. So, Round Cheeks and Dunce Face are on the roof, Kiken smirked. That makes my job easier. What's the game plan? Ashido asked. I mean, obviously we're going to the roof, but the bomb is floating. We don't go for the bomb then, Kiken rolled his eyes. We capture the villains instead. I'll go for Pikachu and you go for Round Cheeks. Wait a minute, why dash? The bell interrupted her, and the explosive blonde jumped up, blasting his way up to the roof like he did in his last match. Ashido rolled her eyes, but ran forwards and started climbing up the side of the building using her acid. Kiken touched down onto the roof at the same time that Ashido reached the top of the roof. He rushed Kaminari, while Ashido ran towards Uraraka, flinging around acid while Uraraka dodged. Kaminari did the same, not making any moves to fight offensively and dancing around Kiken. The floor was starting to be covered in sizzling acid. Izuku grinned as he realized the team's plan. Uraraka jumped off of the roof, making herself float as she left Kaminari on the roof. Kami, now. Kiken's face was priceless, and lightning danced around him as Kaminari let his quirk go, electricity flowing through the acid and arcing into him and Ashido. They flopped onto the floor, and Kaminari blinked dumbly. Huh, I thought that would take more volts. The hero team has been knocked unconscious. The villain team wins. I'll go get Kiken, Izuku said, having finished his note-taking. Before All Might could object, he jumped into the vents, using one for all to zoom to the battleground. He popped up from one of the vents going up to the roof, to see that Uraraka had landed back on the roof with Kaminari's help. Hi guys. Oh, hi Mito. Uraraka waved as Izuku walked over. Are you here to help out? Yeah, I've done my assignment for Nedzu, I just need to polish it up, but I can do that at home. He looked over the two hero students. Kaminari, can you take Ashido? Uraraka, you should probably go down and see All Might, I can take Kiken. Are you sure? Kaminari asked. No offense, but you kind of look like a stick. Izuku answered that by bending down and picking up Kiken, easily slinging him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. The uniform makes me look smaller than I am, he shrugged, starting to walk to Recovery Girl. Kaminari stood there blinking for a few seconds, before something adjusted in his brain and he got Ashido on his back, following the greenette back to the main campus. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.